It's called Mission Impossible. Everything that was done in MI3, wasn't really that difficult. Even the jump from the buildings that happened later on, he could have done that in his sleep. Hey everyone, welcome back to Candid Cinema. I'm Amanda, otherwise known as AMX ND Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Today I will continue my Mission Impossible marathon review with Mission Impossible 3, and this one is directed by J.J. Abrams. I did not like Mission Impossible 3. You guys want to say that John Woo with MI2 really just didn't understand the Mission Impossible franchise, didn't really stay true to what De Palma did in the first one, and that it's so out of place. Watching Mission Impossible 3, the big difference between all three of them, if we're looking at it solely as a trilogy, because that is what J.J. Abrams did here, and that was a big mistake. The big difference is that when Brian De Palma did it, you felt like it was a spy movie filled with tension, espionage. The whole purpose was to showcase the talent of the IMF agents. And you saw that through the visual storytelling. Very subtle hints at what's going to come next, what they're looking for. You have that with the camera and the angles that De Palma chose. The same thing with Wu. He is showing the audience what the agents are looking for. And it's all really small things cut together that you see. Here in MI3, this felt like an action film first. Did not feel like a spy movie. And that's why this one did not sit well with me. Because when you watch MI3, is it a good movie? Sure, if it's not in context with the rest of the franchise, because it feels so different. Even the way it was filmed, it felt like a Michael Bay movie. And of course, this came out in the early 2000s. J.J. Abrams was, coming up, and people heard of him and his work, and they liked him a lot. I'm not saying he's not a talented director, but his vision for MI took the spy elements away entirely. I did not like that they started with the end with Philip Seymour Hoffman, who plays Davian. He is like this trafficker, this black market trafficker. And we're introduced to Julia, played by Michelle Monaghan, as Ethan Hunt's fiance. Okay, what is that going to do for any of us? Magically, Ethan Hunt has a fiance. That's not Naya from Mission Impossible 2, which we got to know. We got to know her. That's the difference here. If Michelle Monaghan was the woman that he fell in love with in MI2, then this would have made more sense for his trilogy, but it does not. You do not feel a connection. I know that Tom Cruise can sell it. Boy, can he sell. Okay, he's a phenomenal actor. Don't get me wrong. But you open with that? That's what you open with. She's getting tortured. She's duct taped. Okay? Philip Seymour Hoffman's asking Tom Cruise where the hell the rabbit's foot is. And I still, to this day, even though I just watched MI3 again, no idea what the rabbit's foot is. No clue. They were throwing lines out with this one. He's crying. She's crying. Philip Seymour Hoffman is very, very good. He's very good as a villain. So we're thinking when you first watch MI3, whoa, he's going to be the best one out of the entire franchise. We're going to get some meat from him. He's going to chew the scenery. Nothing. He takes the shot. We don't see if Julia's dead or not. We don't see if she is, because then it cuts to the title card. Wasn't that great either. The score for MI3 is by far the weakest because the theme does not play within as strong as it did in MI2 and in Mission Impossible. It's just not there. It's a very weak title card. Then it cuts abruptly and goes to this party that they're throwing because they're engaged. You don't get a sense of their relationship. You don't get a sense of who Julia is. And it just feels weird. He obviously doesn't tell her that he's a spy. Obviously. So because he has to keep that a secret, it turns into an action movie. It doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not who the character is. It's not like James Bond, he gets the girl every single time. There's no consequence. There's nothing there. He can have his way with them. Okay, adios, bye. Here's the next one. That's why they're Bond girls. Ethan Hunt having a woman at the level of what he has to do for these missions doesn't make sense. So we have that. The sister does a toast because they're about to get married. And Ethan gets a quick phone call from IMF. And Billy Crudup is in this. I think his character's name is Musgraves or something. And he calls him and he's like, we have a mission for you. One of Ethan's trainees named Ferris, okay, played by Kerry Russell, very young Kerry Russell. So it's funny to see her in something like this, considering that she's had a very strong career with espionage. So she gets kidnapped by Davian, and there's a chip that's being placed in their brain that can just go off at any minute, fake an aneurysm, that type of thing. No one's going to know anything about that. So Ferris has some information that she doesn't disclose to IMF, but she discloses to Ethan because Ethan trained her. So in the span of 3 films, we have Ethan already taking a backseat training other IMF agents because he's on his way out. You're making it into a closed off trilogy. There was not supposed to be a 4, a 5, a 6, and now a 7. There wasn't supposed to be, because that's the way that they wrote MI3. That was wrong. Because Mission Impossible can realistically go on forever if you have a good enough story. Clearly, as we're seeing here, we're witnessing it. So he goes, he tries to save Ferris. Again, action sequences, very Michael Bay. Very messy. The lens flares and like there's no execution. It's just so messy. There's no plan. It's not the same structure as 1 and 2, where they kind of tell you the plan, they're working through it, and they'll tell you what he's about to do as they're doing it. Here, they're just showing you. It's like, okay, let's hope this sticks. That's not Ethan Hunt. Ethan Hunt always has a plan. These are like half-assed plans, and they just roll with it. The set pieces are horrible. They really are. And I just don't understand how poor the cinematography could possibly be in this film in particular. It just did not work for me. And it's called Mission Impossible. Everything that was done in MI3, wasn't really that difficult. Even the jump from the buildings that happened later on, he could have done that in his sleep. Like, that's not an impossible mission. The impossible mission is the time crunch with his wife. That was the impossible mission, not him physically doing any of the things that he did in MI3. There was no massive stunt in MI3 that I went, wow, he pulled that off. Nothing. The one thing was probably the embassy party or whatever. They went to the Vatican or the Rabbit's Foot, all of that. And Philip Seymour Hoffman was there. The switcheroo with the masks and trying to make the mask and getting his voice and trying to knock him unconscious so that Tom Cruise could play Davian at one point, and all of that was cool. That stuff was cool. Philip Seymour Hoffman was phenomenal because Philip Seymour Hoffman had to act like Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt, acting as Davian, which is his character. So there's a lot of things that they could have played around with, and I don't think there was a good sense of direction of where they wanted the story to go, other than the fact that they had tried to deceive the audience. When you're writing a script for a spy film, okay, and you're trying to just have twists and trying to have like red herrings so the audience doesn't clue in, that's not what Mission Impossible is. Mission Impossible, the beauty of this franchise, as I stated in MI1 review and my MI2 review, is that the directors, the writers, let the audience in on what the spies have to do, on what the IMF agents have to do. The audience knows. They know everything with the characters. That's why this works. The twists come in, sure, but the audience still knows that it's happening. That's the difference. It's not like shock value. MI's never been about shock value unless it's with the stunts. It's not with the story. You have great twists in other films, don't get me wrong. I couldn't wrap my head around MI3. Thank God Luther was in it. I thought the team was really weak apart from Luther being in it, and that's why they had to bring Luther in for MI3. So I'm going to jump straight to the end because I just did not like this. I rated MI3, and I'm going to say this beforehand because it's the truth. I rated it 1.5 out of 5. And the reason why is because it doesn't service the franchise. If anything, it just makes it more complicated, especially with the placement now. If you watched it back then in the early 2000s when it did come out, you're probably like, this is the end for Ethan Hunt. That's it. This is the 3rd installment. There's a trilogy. Done. They ended it correctly. But now out of 7, It's the weakest of all of them, to be perfectly honest, because it doesn't follow suit. So as we go straight to the end, because this is where my problem is. Ethan Hunt lets Davian get away. Davian gets away and they have a conversation because Ethan was like, you better tell me where the freaking rabbit's foot is. You better give me this information, whatever it was. I'm still confused. After he says, I'm going to find your wife. I'm going to make her suffer in front of you. She's going to say your name, blah, 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 all of that. Ethan doesn't say that he has a wife, but Davian knows who he is. But Ethan didn't say who he was. So Davian can find a way. And he does find a way. So he gets away. And now he puts Ethan in a time crunch of 48 hours. He has to stop Davian to get to Julia, right? So you're thinking this man has 48 hours. He has enough time to do whatever he has to do. An impossible mission. This is what really pissed me off here, because you chose to deflect the entire thing based on the fact that Ethan Hunt didn't tell IMF what Ferris had told him in private, and he was keeping that information. You had 2 to 3 days to talk to him, but now with the time crunch of 48 hours, you gotta talk to him. So they arrest him. They bring him into IMF, which is absolutely idiotic because Ethan Hunt's not a mole. He never has been, i.e. the first freaking movie. That doesn't make any sense, right? So they bring him in. A day is gone because he brought him in. And then randomly, Billy Crudup's character, Musgraves, gets Ethan out of there because Lawrence Fishburne was like, oh, I have to find out about these secrets. I have to bring Ethan in, blah, blah, blah. And Billy Crudup doesn't really like Lawrence Fishburne and vice versa. So they're always at odds. It's a power struggle there. Ethan breaks out. What was the point of wasting a day? Just because you had to waste a day to prove a point that he has 24 hours or he has 10 hours, however long he was in there. It's stupid. It's so dumb. So then there's this entire sequence, and I think it was Shanghai this time, and he had to get to the rabbit's foot. But the only way that you can get to the rabbit's foot is that he had to swing from different buildings. It was 34 meters, whatever the hell it was, away from the previous building, and he was swinging and whatever. We're thinking, we're going to get an awesome action set piece. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. And in this one, Ethan was acting really irrational, impulsive. He let his emotions get in the way. That's not the Ethan Hunt that we know. Sure, he can grow. I'm not saying there could be character development, but in this case, it doesn't make any sense. He's very out of character in this movie, and you can tell. And there are 3 writers on this film. None of them knew how to write Ethan Hunt. Where's the tension of him jumping? He's jumping buildings and swinging. Where's the tension? The score didn't even do that. And the score was very overpowering. The sound design wasn't that strong in this one either. Okay? So he doesn't have time to get the rabbit's foot to Davian, wherever the hell he is. So he's going to put a tracker on the rabbit's foot, and then he discloses it to IMF so IMF knows. And then he tells Davian where it is. They get to the safe house. The whole scene from the very beginning of the film is played out. Okay? And he does shoot her. He does shoot her. And Ethan Hunt just sits here. Oh my gosh, he's dead. We don't get enough of Philip Seymour Hoffman. He yells at him a couple times. He's very threatening. We love him. What a waste of a character and what a waste of a villain just to have him as a red herring because Billy Crudup shows up and Billy Crudup's the villain. The actual villain who set all of this up just because he wanted the freaking information from Ferris, from Carrie Russell's character from the beginning. That's it. He set this whole thing up. He orchestrated even the hit on Ferris and her dying. Why? Tell me what was the point of all of this? You had Philip Seymour Hoffman there as a villain, and you wasted him because you needed to write a twist in. You didn't have a strong enough story here, period. So after that, they do a face reveal. It's not actually Julia. I didn't like it. Okay. Face reveal. It was one of the girls that was working with Davian at the Vatican party there. He was right beside him. And I'm like, okay. Then they say Julia's in another safe house. All right. So Davian puts one of those chips in Ethan's head and he can die at any second. So once he gets there, he tries to fight the guy, sees that Julia's still all taped up and whatever. And once he gets to her, he says, you have to like jumpstart my brain, whatever, to get the chip out of there and I'll be okay. And he's showing her the ropes and how to get out of there. Okay. Musgraves also appears. Billy Crudup shows up and Julia kills him. Cool. Didn't care. The beauty of this is that we get introduced to Simon Pegg as Benji. And in that last little half where Ethan Hunt has to run to find Julia at the other safe house, we have Benji showing his chops. And I really liked Simon Pegg in here. I think that the banter between the two of them was well needed to kind of save this ending. And Ethan Hunt gets a happy ending. He walks off with Julia, tells her everything, says that he's a spy, shows her IMF. Luther's introduced her. The whole team knows her. And that's the way it ends. That's how MI3 ends, because you were writing to cap off the trilogy instead of making a film that's going to fit the rest of the movies. That's not what happened here. They had no intention of making another Mission Impossible film. Okay, but MI3 out of all 6 of them is by far the weakest in regards to consistency of the conventions that are used in the Mission Impossible franchise. I want you to watch MI3 and then watch Ghost Protocol, because I did those back to back the other night. What a difference. What a difference from Brad Bird to J.J. Abrams. And it's funny because J.J. Abrams produced Ghost Protocol. So I don't know what happened there. They weren't on the same level, I think. And I was just really disappointed with MI3. So I gave MI3, as I said, 1.5 out of 5 stars. I'm sorry that I'm being so hard on it, but I love this franchise, and that just didn't do it for me. It was the weakest out of the 6. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below if I'm being way too harsh on MI3. If it's one of your favorites, please let me know in the comments below. And you guys can always follow me over at AMX NDA Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. If you guys want to help me grow this wonderful community, you can find out ways to do that in the bio below. I'll catch you guys next time. Keep watching movies.